A Science of Change, podcasting by Gilmore Crosby, social scientist, author, and organization development professional since 1984. Hi, Gil Crosby here, and I'm excited to bring you a two-part podcast using family of origin interview questions to interview my own father. So this is intended as a demo for how to do a family of origin interview. The primary thing that you have to keep in mind if you want to have this process have the intended effect is that you have to approach it with genuine interest in learning about another person's life, like an anthropologist. You are not in this process to work on your own issues openly or to in any way criticize or attempt to fix the people you are interviewing. If you are unable to control your own tendency to try to resolve or get some sort of satisfaction for old wounds, etc., through the conversation, then you're not going to be able to conduct a family of origin interview in the way it is intended. On the other hand, if you are able to set aside your own issues and genuinely approach family members with the intent of learning about their life through their own eyes, the paradox is that by doing that, by really listening in a way that only is respectful, no matter how deeply you may feel hurt by the individual about in past moments, if you can do that, then you very well will be shifting the relationship. You'll at least be experiencing the relationship in a way that you never have before, both of you. And you'll be exploring territory that you have probably never explored. So the large possibility of healing is there in this type of interaction. And we encourage these interactions with our students in our 2-year leadership development process, either within their own organizations where we're leading leadership development or through the Leadership Institute of Seattle, which first came into being in 1969 and became a graduate program in 1973 and is currently seeking accreditation to reopen after a few years since it had closed and ceased to operate. So it's an exciting time, and we will be using these same methods in a 1-year leadership development program. We have participants write an autobiography and sit down with a group of peers and read their autobiography and listen to the other autobiographies. It's a powerful process where people for one, realize that they're not the only one who went through some difficult times in their childhood and throughout life. They perhaps have carried a lot of shame about their own story. There's no need to be ashamed of your story. You were born into whatever you were born into. Ironically, people who had an easy time of it relatively, with a stable family, with stable income, they carry shame over having had it so easy. And so getting things out in the open, so to speak, between a group of peers, it's certainly a trust-building activity. But even more important is the connections that can be made between my early experiences and how I relate to authority now, how I relate to authority figures, comes in no small way out of my experience from the beginning of life. I immediately was in an environment with big people, adults, older siblings, who had a huge influence on everything that happened to me, as were you. And we get quickly attached to certain behaviors, emotions, and hold strong judgments about how people should behave in positions of authority, and so project those onto people, and also hold strong judgments about how we should behave in positions of authority. All of that comes from the very beginning. It starts to be formed immediately. And so that's why it's critical to leadership development. How you lead today is influenced by the habits you formed long ago. And the more clear you are about what those habits are, the more you can make choices now, instead of just living those habits as if it's just you. You can start to see that they're habits. And if you're adverse to being clear when you're unhappy, you can learn how to let people know when you're unhappy. If you're not in the practice of telling people when you're happy, you can learn how to tell people when you're happy. These are all really important aspects of any boss-subordinate relationship, and there's much more. So that's why we have people do family of origin work, is because it's relevant now. And the family of origin interview is optional when we do a one-year program, but many students do it. It's part of the required curriculum when we do a 2-year program. And so that's why I'm demoing it with you in these podcasts. So I hope you enjoy experiencing this real family of origin interview. Okay, 2 final pieces of information. One is that my father and I failed to get the podcast website to work to record our call. So we finally settled, as I have done once before, it worked well enough. We finally settled for him to just call me on the phone and me to have that on speaker and to record on my laptop that way. So his voice isn't as loud as mine, and I just ask the listener to bear with that, or of course you could choose to not bother with it if it is not satisfactory to you. But that is a small dilemma in these recordings. The second thing is much more important. We have professional therapists working with our second-year students. We give them all kinds of professional support. All the faculty are very experienced in using family of origin for learning. If you are listening to this and you are excited and motivated in whatever way and you want to do interviews, I highly recommend that you have a therapist as a coach on how to go about approaching your family in this way. And, if not, if you're pretty confident that you can stay objective and kind as you ask your questions, then, go ahead, feel free. If the intensity is more than that, then, certainly professional assistance is advised. And you can call me. I'll talk to you about it. And you also could try, and if it doesn't go the way you hoped, you could get help and then try again. So just please note that these issues can run really deep, really, really deep, as you may well know. And so you have to judge for yourself your capacity to stay differentiated and objective. If you have any doubts about that, get help and then proceed. Okay, I wish you all the best. And now we're going to go into the episode. Episode 1 and 2 will have this preamble. Take care. All right, it's great to be back with you. This is the second part of a family of origin interview demonstration. My father has kindly agreed to participate by answering interview questions. So I'm using Brenda Kerr Minno's interview questions, and we are now to the category of my father's marriage and early years of my childhood. So, Dad, it's great to be with you again. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. It's my privilege.
All right. So the first question is, how, where, and when did you meet Mom?
First time I remember seeing your mother was when our seminary choir was doing a concert in Northwest or Northeast Ohio. And Lewis Fries, who I knew because I had worked at Camp Wanakee, and Lewis had also volunteered there. The father, her father, your to-be grandfather.
A wonderful grandfather.
Anyway, he came to the concert, and he brought this very attractive gal that I didn't know who it was, and I knew the family quite well. I knew not only the father, and I knew the mother somewhat, but I especially knew Louis, the son. He and I were very close, and we would go out in the woods at Camp Wanakee and sleep out overnight by that marvelous several hundred-year-old beech tree in the back of the property and back of the camp. And Louis and I did a lot of things together. We just loved each other. So I knew Louis, and then Grace, Ruth's older sister, went to Otterbein when I went to Otterbein. But I had no idea there was a Ruth in the family. In fact, I don't believe I knew that Grace and Louis were in the same family for a long time. But so anyway, I didn't know who it was, but I sure thought she was pretty. And that was the first time I ever saw her. And of course, afterwards I met her. And to my surprise, there was another daughter in the family.
Nice. And the next question is, what did you like most about her?
Oh, one thing I liked a lot about her was that a couple things here. One thing was that her dad was a pacifist, and I was inclined that way. And I remember her saying she never met a man or a boy, whatever I was then, who held those beliefs, and she admired her dad a lot. So we had similar beliefs about racial issues, about the war, about other things. Now, the other thing was that I admired her as a nursing student. She graduated the top in her class at Massillon City Hospital. And she was a lovely nurse and a very good nurse. I mean, she graduated of the class. So those were two things that stood out for me.
Cool. What do you recall of the events leading up to the decision to get married?
Well, I don't recall much at all. I don't know how to handle that question, Gil.
That's all right. If you don't remember, you don't remember.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't remember.
Let's see. What were your parents' feelings around your decision to marry, and your brother's feelings?
Well, in my family, it was just assumed by my mother and dad that I would marry a high school sweetheart named Mary Lou.
Mm.
And it's very hard for my mother to accept Ruth because my mother was so tied emotionally to Mary Lou, who only lived a few blocks from where they lived in Wilkinsburg in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
And they had already attached themselves to her, and then later never did detach. They became, in essence, grandparents for Mary Lou's children to the marriage she got into when ours fell through. And ours fell through because I wanted to marry Ruth, not marry Lou.
Okay.
Yeah, and my brother, the whole family Mary Lou was part of the family. So quite in a way, a crisis when I made a decision to not go that direction.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Who asked who to get married?
What?
Who asked whom to get married, and where did it occur? What was going?
It was probably me asking her simply because that's the way it was expected to happen. And as far as where, I have no idea.
Okay, no worries. What was your first year of marriage like? What was going on?
Well, let's see. I had taken a youth pastorate at a Canton church, and they provided housing. It was actually an attic, but it was furnished and everything. And Kim was born that year. So that means that our first year of marriage. That's right. Right after the wedding, it was a beautiful wedding outdoors by the church. My brother paid, and his wife Dorothy paid for our trip to Boston, and we went to Boston University. I did. She got a job there in a hospital as a nurse, of course, and really basically funded our year there. We lived close to the Boston Red Sox baseball stadium, and I had a cousin there who had season box tickets, so his business did. So we saw a lot of games, saw Ted Williams many times. We also saw the Boston Celtics. I think I'm right in saying Cousy was playing for them then. She encouraged me, Ruth did, to go to a ballet, which I didn't particularly want to go to, but I loved it. And that certainly played a part in our later history with Sherry, encouraging her in her ballet. So, but the year in Boston was a rich year. We met an Oriental person named Kim, a man, of course. That was a male name. And that's where Kim got his name. And of course, that's when I had my first tea group. And that's when Ruth and I decided to try Marsh Chapel. And here was this amazing Howard Thurman, whose eloquence someone has compared to a jazz musician in the way he delivered his sermons. And she very much loved Howard Thurman. And even though she didn't have the opportunities to be with him that I had, but she did every Sunday morning. So we had that marvelous year, and then moved back to work at Camp Wanakee in the summer. And then I got this ministry that I started talking about in Canton.
Okay.
And Kim was born. And
nice. Okay, cool. So let's see. Where are we? What did you do together and apart for fun?
I don't know. We enjoyed each other. You know, we were tied up with a baby. I just don't know how to answer that question. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. You already mentioned before the baby going to Red Sox games and so on, but
At Camp Wanakee, she was also the camp nurse. So
okay.
I was at Camp Wanakee for 7 years on the staff, and she was the nurse for at least 2 or 3 of those years.
Nice. That was true throughout your marriage. I mean, there she was as the office staff at the new school later and so on. So, okay, in your new relationship, during those early days, how did you deal with conflict, sadness, anger, happy feelings? Did you feel loved and listened to?
Oh, yeah. I had one dissatisfaction, and that is she did not have a liberal arts education, and there's a lot of things that I love to talk about that later I was able to talk about a lot with Patricia, my wife now of 37 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
But which I couldn't do with Ruth. We did not have that, and that was something missing for me in the marriage. And but otherwise, we enjoyed the children, you children, so much, and I think she was a great mother until she left and decided not to do that mothering anymore. I don't know. We just enjoyed daily life. I was playing sports with you kids in the backyard all the time. She was pretty much a homebody fixing meal.
Well, the next question is, how did you divide up the work around the house? Who took on what jobs and roles? How'd you feel about it?
I think my job was the outside of the house. When we moved to East 1306, we bought 2 lots. So we had a huge outside, and we had 2 gardens, fruit garden and then a vegetable garden. My job was to manage all that, and her job was pretty much to manage what was within the house. We helped each other some on that, but not a whole lot.
I think I remember her in the garden.
Yeah, she would be there some, and I would be inside doing things too, but like with the sweeping floors and things. But yeah.
What was it like during pregnancy? Like, do you remember what it was like when Kim was first coming? Were you afraid? Were you?
No, I wasn't. I think it was reflected in that Ruth wasn't either.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as a nurse, she knew more about those kind of things than probably the average woman.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when Kim was born, what was going on? What was going on in the world?
Well, it was on New Year's Day, and in those days, the Rose Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and all the Tangerine Bowl and all these big bowls were happening. And I was very caught up in who was playing in them. So at the hospital, she was got in labor, and I was tuning into her and tuning into who was winning which game. So it was quite a New Year's Day.
What year was that?
1955.
So Kim was born on New Year's Eve, 1955?
No, New Year's Day.
New Year's Day. Okay, cool. Okay. What was it like for you being a father? Feelings? Yeah, go ahead.
I totally loved it. I mean, I just considered it to be a huge privilege to be a father. And I think part of that was because my dad loved being a father, and I loved being a son to him. And I loved having you sons and my daughter Sherry. It was wonderful. In fact, when Ruth left, Sherry was about 11 or 12, and Chris was 10 or so. And I therefore became a single parent. And you were 15, but you were involved in the new school a lot, but they were home. And I just loved being a single parent. I did. Taking Sherry to get her ballet dresses and measured and all. I mean, it's just, and going to see her at rehearsals and going to see Chris play intramural sports with the new school. And so it was a privilege of being a parent, huge privilege.
Nice. Well, I certainly don't remember it changing our relationship. You know, like I was living at the new school for a year, but it didn't come between us. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that was your experience because that was also mine. Yeah.
Well, okay, so into the world comes Kim, and do you recall anything about being with your first child and like what your hopes were for him and what you...
Well, I remember carrying Kim a lot up on my shoulder, and he was, he always looked ahead. Wherever I was walking, he would turn his head that direction. And as soon as I would turn around, I'd try to trick him. He would turn his head looking ahead. You know, it was kind of interesting, and I don't know, just playing with him when he was little. It was very positive. This was a lot of those memories are in that first year at the Canton Church in the attic that we lived in, and we had another phenomena that was interesting. And what is it, an aphid? There's a certain kind of I'm sorry I brought it up now, I can't remember the name of it. There is an insect that's about 3 or 4 inches long, has, anyway, it's very unusual. If I name it, you would say, oh yeah. But it appeared at our anniversary the first 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
We'd end up seeing it. It was very rare to see. But
mysterious.
Yeah. But special. It's a special insect. It's very important to humans because it eats insects that otherwise do some harm to the food chain.
Okay. Cool. I like it that memories are sort of popping up. How did your marriage change with the arrival of a child?
How did it change?
Yeah.
I'm not aware that the arrival of Kim changed anything. And I'm not, David then came along, I think less than 2 years from then. And I don't know, when I had full-time work in Michigan at a Judson Collins camp, we had a place we lived that was fairly nice. Kim and David lived there. You came along but you were quite tiny then. We're talking. See, you were born in 59, weren't you?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're talking. We went to Michigan in 61. That's wrong. We were in Michigan when you were born. Yeah.
Detroit. Yeah, I was born in Detroit.
Yeah, right.
Go Lions.
Right. Yeah, and out at the camp in the summer, you would have been about 3, 4. Kim was an interesting one at camp. He'd walk in with a snake in his hand or what. David and him were something else. Really, I enjoyed them a lot at the camp. And it was, you were little.
Yep. I remember, later, I think Chris was alive when Dave and Kim, they were bold. So they'd go off into the woods and I remember the time they hit the hornet's nest.
Oh my goodness. That was in when we moved to Tennessee. Yeah, they hit a hornet's nest and dove into nearby water, and then learned later that there were poisonous water snakes there.
Yeah. I'm glad they learned it later.
Yeah. It was an interesting experience because we heard them screaming and we went toward them, and a Native American woman was nearby, and she started picking up herbs, or we would call them weeds, and rubbing them on the boys. Well, Ruth wasn't trained in that direction. She got them in the car to take them. I had to stay with you, and was Sherry born yet? I don't know, but anyway, I had to stay there. She went to the doctors, but by the time she got there, all the swelling was gone. The doctor didn't have to do anything. The herbs apparently worked.
Yeah, right. That's nice. I was lucky that woman was nearby.
It was.
Okay, so how did you deal with conflict? Let's say when I was let's say I'm at least 5 or something now. Disagreements over moving, money, how to raise the children, etc.
I think of those three, the only one where we did have conflict was how to raise the children. Ruth was the more disciplinarian, and I was more laissez-faire, permissive, and that became an issue with us because she had to do what she thought I should be doing. So that was the major conflict we had. Besides what I said earlier, that she was not inclined to be knowledgeable about social, philosophical issues. She was very socially conscious, racially conscious. When we lived in Tennessee, she was great. She took obscene phone calls from neighbors when we would have black families out to play with the kids in the backyard. She handled that really well.
Yeah, she had a backbone for sure.
That's right.
Well, I'm just recalling you. I think Sherry was with me, and we were going to leave the yard to run away.
Yeah, I remember that in Tennessee.
And that may have been the time I had a dresser drawer from my dresser filled with some socks and underwear and stuff, and your coin jar. And so we would have some money. And so we were going to leave, and you came out and said, if I leave the yard, that I wouldn't get my allowance next week.
That's right. So you didn't run away.
Yeah, so that was discipline. I mean, that was a firm hand.
Oh, I took a firm hand at times, yeah. One time when David was going to hitchhike, I found out he was going to hitchhike with a girl. And I thought that could be very dangerous for a girl to be just out hitchhiking, young kid. So I told him no, and he was going to do it anyway. And I said, okay, I'll call the police then. And so he didn't do it. But so I did take stands, but they weren't at times, yeah.
I recall. I also remember, Mom, when I was going to go to kindergarten, I, for whatever reason, didn't like the idea, and I think I cried quite a bit. and she decided to just take me home and let me skip kindergarten.
Wow.
So I never went to kindergarten. I just started in first grade the next year.
Wow.
So I appreciated that. At the time, I appreciated it quite a bit. So anyway, let's see. Is there any discomfort in talking about these things?
What things?
The things we're talking about.
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. Did you have any friends, like in Nashville, that you could talk to about personal things, feelings?
Well, certainly. I was very close to certain staff members, like Renee Pino and Ruth Emery, and we worked together a lot. And there were others. McElvaney, what was his first name? He was the one that developed the Glide films on sexual education. By that time, he was on the staff with me, and he was a brilliant guy in the field of sex education. Hugh Hefner would fund him to go to conferences in Europe. And my closer friends were Renee and Ruth. They were the two real close friends.
Now, I remember Renee just as sort of a warm presence, a loving presence. I mean, it's a very vague memory, but...
Well, I remember one time, I believe we were in Oregon, but wherever we were, it was out west. He and you having a long conversations. A couple.
I believe it.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah.
Well, then let's see. Here's the next question. What was happening around the David's birth?
Oh, wow. We were in, I think, Detroit by then. Let's see, that would have been 56.
That's what he says. He was born in Detroit.
Oh, yeah. We moved from Wanakee. 55 was my last year, and I started in 56 at Camp Judson Collins and Detroit Conference and the other camps up there. I was in charge of all the camps. I don't know how to say what was happening. We finally were able to buy a place with the help of my boss, Harold Bremer, who was a great man. And I loved that work. It was wonderful. Traveling the state of Michigan, one camp was as far from Detroit as New York City. It was in the Upper Peninsula. So I would travel hundreds of miles sometimes. And I remember having some hallucinations of an elephant crossing the road and things when I was driving home. And I began to realize maybe I better pull over and sleep a little.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like it. And that must have been at times tough on Mom, your absence.
Oh, yeah. I was gone a lot then, and she was at home with you kids. And it's also the time when the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the New York Yankees. And my dad sort of entered a lotto and got a ticket for the first game, 2 tickets. So I drove down and saw Vernon Law and Elroy Face pitch. I saw Roger Maris hit a home run. Mazeroski hit a home run in the first game. People don't talk about that.
Nice.
Maris, I'm sure Maris did. I'm quite sure Mazeroski did.
Well, you saw Clemente get a hit because he got a hit in every World Series game he was ever in.
Oh, yeah. We didn't know him quite as well.
Sure.
He was, I think, a rookie.
He's certainly young, yeah.
Yeah. So,
nice.
They were great years. That's also when the offices were downtown in Detroit. And every spring, every Lent, Martin Luther King Jr. would come and speak at the Methodist Church, really the Methodist Cathedral, just a half block from our office. And, of course, I went and shook his hand and things like that. So it was a great experience, those years in Detroit for me, and for Ruth it was, I'm sure, a tough one.
I liked being born.
In 59.
Okay. Maybe I don't remember whether I liked it at the time, but I'm glad it happened.
I have a vague memory of being outside in the parking lot of that hospital where you were born. Yeah.
Okay, so there's only a few questions left. Memory of siblings' relationship as children and teenagers. How did they get along? How did you deal with sibling conflict, resentment, jealousy?
Well, one thing that comes to mind related to you is that Kim and David were very competitive, and I wanted them to help you more in your development in sports than they did. Winning was important to them.
I think, I'm just going to say that I think they were like, maybe let's say they were 5 and 7 and I was 3. And it was really early for them, I think, to have the concept of like helping while they're busy competing. Later, they certainly got that concept.
Oh, they really did. Yeah. But
it was bad timing. I should have waited a couple of years before I got born.
And I think you mentioned about some early conflict with Sherry, your sister. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my memory of that is more in Spokane.
Oh,
Like I mostly just remember playing with Sherry and Chris in Nashville. And I don't remember much from Great Falls. But yeah, that's, to me, when I had conflict with Sherry, it was more once I was an adolescent. Of course, by then I had conflict with a lot of people because they were all, screwed up.
Oh, of course. Well, no, I don't remember major conflicts with you kids. You played a lot. Kim would lead the neighborhood in games with water pistols and, kids running all over the place shooting each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a great neighborhood in here in Spokane. Just I think as good as you could find.
Chris and I were just talking about the sandbox.
That was a huge sandbox.
It was. It was like almost as big or as big as this whole side of the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we spent many hours there. I was in charge of a game where we had divided the sandbox into nations and we fought each other with army men.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I always won because I had more army men. So, well, anything else about us as our relationship? I mean, I agree. I mean, in a lot of ways we got along pretty well. And I think it was probably the hardest thing was for Sherry being the only girl and Chris being the youngest and then having the divorce happen and all that. Was certainly a tough time.
Very difficult, especially for them, I think.
Yeah.
Kim and David were off to college, and you were not quite there, but you were 15 compared to Sherry's, and Chris 10, 11, or 10 and 12 or something.
Right.
Yep.
Somehow we've, maintained our sibling relationships, though, over all these decades.
You really have. It's amazing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's very good.
And your cousin relationship, especially with Greg.
Yes. And with some with others, but we're so spread out. Let's see. Sum up your views of married life, personal life, joys, disappointments, feelings. Generally, how things were for you after 10 years of marriage. So that'd be up to 1965, right? Or maybe 1964. So go ahead, sum that all up.
We were married, I think in 53.
53, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so, and then you're talking about the years in, that would be the years in Nashville. Oh, I thought those were good years. We found interracial kindergarten for David. We found ways to have, we found that wonderful little church, mission church, United Church of Christ. And I think you were the one that had, or was it David, had a little girl there that about your age that you had a crush on or something.
I had a crush on the pastor's adopted daughter. I remember that.
Yeah, the book out.
Yeah, I was like, 4 and she was 13 or something when I had the crush. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there wasn't much future in it.
But, we were dealing with a lot of social issues in Nashville. It was the years of Martin Luther King Jr. It was, I marched, and as I said, and several neighbors would make obscene phone calls to us, and Ruth would handle those. And I don't know, they were good years. We arranged day camps, interracial day camps. I arranged them. And you kids got to be in interracial day camps in Nashville.
Yeah.
And so we were dealing with a lot of important social issues at that time. Yeah.
I remember you sobbing when Kennedy got shot.
Me sobbing?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah. Yeah, our heroes got killed into that decade.
Yeah. I mean, that was just 63. I think 63, right?
Yeah, so. John Kennedy, Bob Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr.
Right, later, yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough decade. And
yep, and your brother.
That's right.
A lot of losses.
A lot of losses.
Well, Papa, we have completed Brenda's family of origin interview.
Wow.
So, anything else that this brings to mind for you about the family experience?
I just remember some wonderful experiences in the car, singing away.
Yes.
They were good experiences.
Good.
With Ruth, it ended abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of good years,
Yeah, and I continued, of course, my relationship with her. So it was a whole different experience for me. It was, it was still shocking and everything, but I continue my relationship with both of you. So,
and of course, I went into a second marriage and left it myself in about 3 years, and then found, I always say the love of my life. I just wrote a thing, the Spokesman Review asked for love stories to be sent in for Valentine's Day.
Nice.
So I got up this morning about 4 a.m. and wrote something that was going through my head. And I already sent it to them. So
that's lovely.
See if they like it.
Is Patricia there next to you right now?
Yeah.
Love you, Patricia.
Can you hear him? He says, love you, Patricia.
I heard that, and I appreciate that, and I love you too, son.
Nice.
Yeah. I talk about being smitten by her and she by me, and it's still true.
That's beautiful, Dad. And it's great that you found that after going through, the crisis you went through.
Neat.
Yeah, I guess I'm just struck by how vivid my memories of you when you're sad are. Like
When I'm
once, yeah, once we were driving down the South Hill to go to, I think, to a pizza place, and a dog ran out in front of the car, and you hit it,
wow,
and
wow,
do you remember that?
yes,
And then you were outside crying.
wow,
So those are memories that really stick with me that I admire. I admire,
yeah,
and
yeah. Well,
they bring tears to my eyes, even if as I think of them.
yeah, it was hard for me to take a life.
Yeah, yeah. And the child that lost the dog was right there. It was. You care a lot.
That is true. And one of my heroes, Albert Schweitzer, spent most of his career in Africa. And he was careful when walking across the paths not to step on insects.
Yeah.
And his motto was reverence for life.
Well, you certainly taught me about Daddy Longlegs as soon as I was able to think or learn, and the importance of spiders in the ecosystem. And
I wrote articles on that, which were published.
Really?
I have them. One's called Spiders, Soil, and the People of God.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't think I've ever read that I recall, at least.
I wonder where it is. It was published in a church school magazine.
Nice. That's great.
Chris may have it.
And of course, I appreciate you starting the new school. I know you did that because you cared about your children, along with caring about other children.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially children who were gay.
Yep.
And didn't have a safe place to be.
Yep. And many of those children that attended the new school will attest that they think you saved their lives by creating that space.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, as far as this interview process goes, I think we can conclude.
Okay.
And I love you and appreciate you doing this, and look forward to the next time we talk.
Take care, my son.
Okay. You too, Dad.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, I appreciate you listening. This, again, is Gil Crosby. And I want you to take advantage of what's available to you. I have many free materials. I am happy to talk to people about their situations, especially if you're trying to create change, either social change or organization change. We have frequent workshops that are available, T group workshops. If you have never been in a T group with us, then don't miss it in your life. Many people have said to me, of all the trainings I've ever received, I got this one 30 years ago, and it's the only one that stuck with me. You're learning from your actual interactions with the other participants and with the faculty. The faculty are walking the same talk that they're teaching of behavioral skills. It's a training workshop. That's what the T stands for. This is done in the spirit of the creation of T groups by Kurt Lewin and his associates. It's for groups. It's for teams. That's how it was originally designed. It is a opportunity to learn about theory and put it directly into practice. Again, the original design, you learn things and then you put them into practice. It was not just all ambiguity, which is how some T groups, most are led today, where the faculty hardly says anything. That's not how this is designed. So join us for that. There's always workshops. There's the Leadership Institute of Seattle, which has certificate programs, a two-year program where you will learn from T groups and learn how to do all the organization development work that my father designed most of it, and I continue that practice alongside my brother Chris and many other associates. So don't be a stranger. There's a lot going on. It's always changing. So be in touch, and it's on the website, crosbyod.com. I look forward to working with you in your organization or as you pursue things like reducing gun violence and decreasing racism in our society. Whatever your goals are, the social science of Kurt Lewin guides how to achieve those goals in a reliable way. And so that's what I apply and practice every day and invite you to.